Brewster here with New Brewster's Millions of Rants, and this is Digging for Inspiration. And I've had a ton of messages and comments and questions from friends and complete strangers, since I've started my channel, as far as how I find, some of these lesser known guitarists and bands, albums, the music and stuff that I've featured here on my channel. I have featured a lot of very famous music, but then I always do deep dives and try to find like lost classics, B-sides, and just forgotten songs, really. And it's something I've done forever. I mean, ever since I started playing guitar, I've been obsessed with music my entire life. But when I started playing guitar, I didn't really know who was good or who I would like. And I would walk into a record store and just be overwhelmed. Like, I have no idea. I knew Van Halen and Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. But then when I started diving a little bit deeper and kind of digging around, I didn't know. So this episode is going to basically talk about that. I've also had a lot of messages asking to see my vinyl record collection, also my collection of Guitar Player magazines, and I have a ton. Hundreds and hundreds of albums, hundreds of magazines. I think I have like 700 or 800 CDs, tons of books and videos and stuff. But a lot of it's all packed up in storage. I've got milk crates with vinyl all over my studio here. So I don't really have it set up to present like on a video. I'm hoping I can do that soon. I need to find a bigger studio or a bigger space to do that. But I thought I could put this together, talk about some albums that I've discovered like in the last, 2 or 3 years that I really like. And it came directly from just digging for inspiration. So remember, musical inspiration is everywhere, but sometimes you have to look for it. So to prove that I've always done different versions of what I talked about during the intro, when I was 13, I went to a record store with my dad. He kind of dropped me off, and I didn't have very much money. And I walked in, and I remember thinking, okay, don't buy Van Halen, because I had a lot of Van Halen at that time. I wanted to find something else, aside from Van Halen and Zeppelin and some of the people that I knew. But I didn't know what to grab. I thought, well, I don't want to waste my money on something I don't like. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just look for albums that have a guitar, on the cover. And I spotted Steve Vai's Flexible. And it was sitting there, and I was like, what's this? And it looked like the guitar was melting, and I was kind of interested. It's like, okay, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to buy it. And I also bought Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow that day. I bought both of those albums the same day. And those are actually the old albums that I bought when I was a kid. I still have them. I have framed them. And I actually met Jeff Beck in 1999. That was in Indianapolis at the Rant Theater. And I met Jennifer Batten that day, too. But I saw Jeff Beck and I ran out to my car because I brought the sleeve. I didn't actually bring the vinyl album, just the sleeve, just in case, I might meet Jeff Beck. And I did. I waited by the back door. He came out by his tour bus, reached out his hand, shook my hand. I thanked him. I was like, I'm a huge fan. He signed the album. Him and Jennifer Batten and the band hopped on the bus and they drove off. And I just stood there in the parking lot staring at the album I bought when I was 12 in shock. Like, wow, Jeff Beck actually, signed my album. I was blown away. Now I am going to rant a little bit about 5 albums that I've discovered like in the last couple of years, like I mentioned earlier, but before we get there, I have had a lot of viewers asking for books and recommendations for things to read, and if you're a reader, I highly recommend this book. This is Vinyl, the Complete Hypnosis Catalog, written by Aubrey Powell, and the forewords by Peter Gabriel. This is one of the coolest books I have in my entire library. I have hundreds of books, and this one's top 10 for sure. This is killer. So if you love music, if you also love, album artwork and kind of the history behind some of this stuff, this is the book you're looking for. It's kind of condensed, you know, it's kind of a smaller size. It's not real huge like some of those Taschen books. But this thing is packed with history, photos, stories. I mean, like I said, if you're a music fan, there's Pink Floyd and Zeppelin, and I mean, there's UFO right there. There's Yes, and there's UFO again. I mean, there's just tons. AC/DC right there. You know, I mean, there's Dark Side of the Moon. You know what I mean? So it's really, really a great book. Lots of photos, lots of history and everything, kind of talking about their process of how they did things. Hypnosis definitely is one of the greatest, you know, album artwork, you know, companies or production studios ever. I mean, they're legends. So I am going to talk about and break down what I played during the opening jam at the end of this video, but before we do that, I'm going to rant about these 5 albums that I've recently uncovered over the last couple years, purely by digging, you know, for inspiration. And the first one's Richard Wright's Wet Dream from 1978, his first solo album. You know, Richard Wright, the late great keyboardist from Pink Floyd. Snowy White's on guitar, Mel Collins on saxophone. That's a great album, totally overlooked. It didn't chart, it wasn't a hit or anything. That album actually came out right before Pink Floyd's The Wall, as far as the Pink Floyd timeline. The first time I heard it, I was just blown away. It's like an extra Pink Floyd album. Real dreamy and atmospheric, half instrumental, half vocal. You know, it's a great record. If you're a Pink Floyd fan, you have to listen to that. You're going to love it. And you can definitely hear Richard's influence and style, you know, that he added to Pink Floyd's sound just by listening to his album. And also, kind of a side note, Hypnosis did the album cover artwork too, which I just recommended that book. But that's a Hypnosis, you know, album cover, which is extra cool. Next up is Steve Howe's second solo album, the Steve Howe Album from 1979. And I've actually featured this before. I've shown this on camera before. I think it was in the Steve Howe Soloing Secrets from a couple years ago. It's a classic album, Roger Dean, you know, artwork here. But the reason I didn't put this on the frame on the wall is because I want to show you the gatefold, which I think I did this before too. But I wanted to show this again. You know, there's the credits and some photos. And then over here, this is so cool. Let me kind of come in here. This is like Steve's, you know, guitar rig or collection. And then down at the bottom, it's kind of got like this little chart to kind of show you like what guitar he played on what song. And it really adds to the listening experience, because when you're listening to these songs, you can actually look and see like what guitars he used. And then you can kind of hear them where it's like, hey, that sounds like the Telly, or that sounds like the SG or something. But it's really cool. I've never actually seen this before on an album where it really gave you like the behind the scenes view of what the guitarist played song by song and track by track. That's super cool, and I wish I had charts like that for all kinds of albums. Zeppelin and Van Halen and all kinds of stuff. Because that's so cool to know, like, yeah, that's the guitar he used on that song. Next up is Jean-Luc Ponty's Cosmic Messenger from 1978, and I actually featured the song Cosmic Messenger in the Discovering Dorian Scales and Tales modal lesson from a couple years ago, and I've posted music from that album on my Facebook profile for years. That's a great record, all instrumental. And it's just very inspired music. And I love a lot of Jean-Luc Ponty's albums. You know, I discovered him because he worked with Frank Zappa. And then Alan Holdsworth recorded with Jean-Luc Ponty. Also Daryl Stuermer, you know, from Genesis and Phil Collins fame. And, you know, Jean-Luc Ponty has a lot of great albums. But that one has Peter Manu on guitar. You might remember Peter. He was in the Arsenio Hall band when Arsenio Hall had his talk show, like back in the 90s. Great guitarist. And that's just such an inspiring record. I could listen to that on repeat every day and never complain. Okay, next up, this is a fun one. This is Neil Merryweather's Kryptonite from 1975, and I discovered that about 2 or 3 years ago. I've posted music from it on my Facebook page a lot. I love that album. It just completely blew my doors off when I discovered it. And that's Don Rico, you know, artwork on the cover. You might remember Don Rico, Marvel Comics. You know, he worked with Stan Lee forever. And Neil Merryweather's definitely a legendary late great Canadian musician, a badass. And he had a different group, and he kind of, you know, left this band and started forming a different band. And the band that backs him up on that album was younger guys, They were very inexperienced. They weren't legends or icons or anything. They were kind of unknown musicians. And they just knocked it completely out of the park. Really, the riffs, the solos, the tone, the energy, it's all over that album. It's like, yeah. And I actually discovered that I was watching Ash vs. Evil Dead. And it was like at the credits at the end of one of those episodes. And they played just a few moments of Star Rider. And it caught my ear. And I was like, what was that music? And I rewound it and listened to it. And I looked it up. Then I checked out Kryptonite, the album. It just blew me away and rocked my socks off. I was like, yes, this is exactly my kind of stuff. And I couldn't believe I'd never heard it or heard of it until I saw that Ash vs. Evil Dead episode. Then I looked it up. And like I said, that's such an inspiring album. I love that one. It kicks ass. So if you've been waiting for me to reveal what I played during the opening jam, this is that moment. And last but not least is Stray Dog, their self-titled debut album from 1973, featuring the legendary Snuffy Walden on guitar. Now you may not really know Snuffy Walden's name, but I bet you've heard his music somewhere. He's done tons of soundtracks for TV shows and films, 30-something, West Wing, Roseanne, The Wonder Years, My So-Called Life, and a ton of stuff. And I actually discovered that album. I was visiting one of my favorite record stores, and they just happened to put it on while I was there, like digging in the vinyl bins. And the first track's called Tramp How It Is, and it goes on like in the intro for like 1:17, and it doesn't really do much during that time. It just kind of rambles around, and there's like people singing, and it's just kind of like, what is this? And then you hear the singer say, fasten your seatbelts. And right after that, the band just hits into high gear, Snuffy starts rocking out, and from that moment onward, that album will just completely rock you. I mean, it's just amazing. And I couldn't believe it. From 73, they were rocking as heavy as Led Zeppelin at that time. I mean, they were just massive. And Snuffy's guitar licks and riffs and stuff are just so inspiring. Van Halen used to cover the song Speak of the Devil from that album, like back in their club days. So that should give you some idea of how good that is. I mean, Eddie loved that album. But it's just another one of those examples of something unexpected that I had never heard of. And it just inspired me and blew me away, from the moment I heard it. Awesome album. Okay, with the opening jam, that was me playing around with the Stray Dogs song Crazy from that album. And it actually fades in, so I couldn't really do that, with my demonstration. So I just started the riff, but it does fade in when you listen to it. And it's this melodic slip and slide kind of blues rock riff. The band's doing hits in the beginning, and they eventually start grooving, like under that riff. But it's something like this. Interesting because you're basically in G, right, for this, and you're hearing that like B flat to C. So like a B flat to C, and then that F to D to G right there. Then that B flat to D, or B flat to G rather, and then you're gonna slide that C to D right there. And that's the slip and slide moment right there. Right, so you're doing. And then, like that. And then like a quick hit on B flat 5 to C5. And that's like the band hits right there, and then you start it again. And right there you hear Snuffy do like a slight pinch harmonic for 73. It's like, whoa. And like a little trill there, and then a B flat to C again. And start the riff again. keeps going. Like, that's where the band kind of kicks in there, and the riff keeps going. And Snuffy's adding like licks and stuff in there and everything. And then it changes, and we're doing... Then Snuffy throws out this really cool lick. Something like that. And you're kind of like string skipping, it's kind of interbolic. And then... something like that. But Crazy kicks ass, and that's just one of the great songs you'll find on that album. And trust me, I know some of you out there may be kind of new to the channel and you don't quite trust me yet, but trust me, if you listen to that, you can find it here on YouTube. It will blow you away. If you're a rock guitar fan, listen to it. That's going to wrap this episode of Brewster's Millions of Rants with digging for inspiration. And I really just wanted to put this together because I've noticed, questions and comments and requests, to feature my albums and guitar magazines and, other stuff. And I don't really have my studio set up to do that. It's really in disarray, and there's plastic tubs and milk crates and stuff all over the place, behind the camera right here. But sooner or later, I have been looking, well, not really aggressively, but I've been looking for some place to move my studio to so I have a little bit more room and I can actually set up shop soon. Just be patient. But I wanted to put this together mainly because I've had those questions. And then I've also had questions like, how do you find all these different bands and stuff? And guitarists and songs and everything. And kind of the short answer is you have to do the work. You have to literally go out and find and search and listen and dig and ask questions to people that like, hey, what's something good maybe I've never heard before? You can just do deep dives on YouTube or go on Wikipedia and start looking up information and albums and stuff. And you literally do have to do work to uncover some of this stuff. Now, sometimes an album or a guitarist or a song might fall right in your lap. Maybe a guitar student comes in and they're like, hey, listen to this, I want to learn this, and then you discover it that way. It could be on the radio. Like I mentioned, like I was watching a TV show and I heard a song in the credits. I went to a record store and heard that Stray Dog album, and I literally bought that right off the turntable. I was like, I don't know what that is, but I'm buying it. I think it was like $5-6. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Those kind of like just unexpected moments with music, like maybe you're not even really searching for something, but then you'll find it, or it'll find you, and it'll just knock your socks off, where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've never heard this before, and it's so good. And I know from talking to students, talking to people, noticing comments here on YouTube, I've been accused of focusing on, old dad butt rock here on my channel. Not really sure what that means, but I guess I'm old and I like rock and I have a butt or something. I don't know what's going on there, but I love older music. I like old things. That's just me. I like old music, old movies, old books, old guitar magazines. I like older stuff. There's nothing wrong with new stuff. I like new stuff too, but the new stuff doesn't really speak to me the way the old stuff do. New magazines, new guitar magazines don't really inspire me like the way old ones do. New music, sometimes it does just knock me out, where it's like, wow, this is so good. But more often than not, I've noticed I usually go back to find that inspiration. And that's just me. You might be completely different. Like maybe you only like music that's like a month old. But for me, music doesn't have an expiration date. Like it doesn't matter if it's from the 60s or 70s or 80s or the 1700s or whatever. Never forget. It's not going to expire. It's not like a loaf of bread or a jug of milk. People are still learning and analyzing box music, which was back in the 1700s or whatever. So it doesn't matter how old or new something is. If it speaks to you or inspires you, pay attention. There's a reason it's talking to you or speaking to you like that. And it may not do anything to your buddy or your friend or your neighbor or your roommate, but it might speak directly to you for whatever reason. And if it does, pay attention. There's something happening there. That's inspiration. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.